The single most important part of branding is becoming famous. A lot of people think branding is about making people fall in love with your brand or creating some powerful brand purpose in meeting. But these ideas are basically just pseudoscience or wishful thinking. What matters, above all else, is that your brand becomes famous. I know this because I was a Fortune 100 brand manager. I also created many brands from scratch, and I follow the leading research on how brands grow from the top marketing schools in the world, including Philip Kotler's Kellogg School of Management, where I studied brand management and got my MBA. The reason fame matters so much is because people tend to like and buy things that are familiar. Familiarity is the most powerful force in marketing psychology, and the more famous you are, the more familiar you become. So how do you make your brand famous? Network research shows us that the key is gatekeepers. These are the journalists, influencers, executives, associations, institutions, group admins, and others who control distribution and access to millions of potential buyers. For example, one of my brands was reviewed by the top YouTuber at the time, PewDiePie. Almost immediately, I got 14 million free views from potential buyers. PewDiePie is a gatekeeper who controls access to the attention of millions of people. You can find gatekeepers easily using this free tool called SparkToro. Just tell SparkToro who your audience is, and it'll tell you what influencers, websites, publications, subreddits, etc. carry the most clout. SparkToro lets you define your target audience in 5 ways: what they frequently talk about, words they use in their profile, social media accounts they follow, websites they visit frequently, and hashtags they frequently use. I use SparkToro to identify the top podcasters who influence veterinarians. Then I approach those podcasters with cold emails and direct messages, offering them a free VIP account to use my software and asking them if we could be guests on their podcast. I even offered some of these podcasters a free dictation microphone since I was marketing dictation software. The campaign was a huge success and I got tons of unpaid media attention. I did this by piggybacking my brand off the brands of famous podcasters. Another example is the Mona Lisa, the single most famous piece of art in the world. It didn't become famous because it was amazing or because it had a great brand name. It became famous because it was stolen. The media attention from the theft skyrocketed the Mona Lisa from obscurity to a household name. In this case, the publications were the gatekeepers and the real secret to the Mona Lisa's success. Albert Einstein's personal brand is another surprising example. He's actually famous because journalists made a mistake. They thought a huge crowd of people in New York was following Einstein when they were actually following someone else. As with the Mona Lisa, media attention boosted Einstein from obscurity. One of the easiest ways to get media attention is to use the free tool Connectively, which is associated with Help a Reporter Out, also known as HARO. You go into Connectively, search for a keyword you want to be known for, and Connectively will show you a list of subjects that reporters want experts to talk about. That's you. Answer their questions with your expertise, and bam, you suddenly get quoted in the top publications. Another approach to gatekeepers is to align yourself with the top software companies in your niche. This is usually one piece of software that buyers use the most frequently. Often this is the accounting software, the CRM, or the practice management system. In one company I work for, we partnered with Intuit, the leading accounting software company. They were the gatekeeper who controlled access to millions of business owners. A lot of the brand building methods I mentioned can be classified as public relations, influencer marketing, or partnership marketing. Another approach, a much simpler and faster approach, is brand advertising. Most advertising expertise focuses on direct response advertising, or advertising that's designed to generate immediate sales rather than to grow the brand and make it famous. So the techniques you use are actually quite different. Here's an example. The easiest way to be successful with Facebook advertising is to use a conversion objective, a sales objective. Here, Facebook knows when a sales occurs on your website, and its artificial intelligence automatically adjusts your campaign to optimize for more sales. With brand advertising, you're trying to influence people who may not make a purchase until a year or more in the future. This is normally around 95% of your potential buyers. In a case like this, Facebook can't optimize for sales. It just doesn't have that data. It's too far in the future. Facebook also does a poor job optimizing for reach because it'll try to allocate budget wherever it can get the cheapest impressions. In one campaign I ran, Facebook was showing most of my ads to retired people when I was advertising professional development. That was because retired people were the cheapest to advertise to. With awareness advertising, you need to be very careful with placements and targeting criteria. Otherwise, you'll end up with cheap ads that never get noticed by the right people. YouTube advertising is great for building brands because people both watch and listen to the ads, unlike most muted experiences in social media. The problem, however, is that YouTube often serves ads on channels that cater to children and people who don't speak the language you're targeting. This is true even if you restrict your targeting. So the real key here is to handpick the channels you want to advertise on to prevent YouTube's algorithm from finding the cheapest but most useless ad inventory. You need to be particularly careful with other channels like Google Display Network and TikTok because a very high percentage of their traffic is just robots. You think you're raising your brand awareness when you're not even serving ads to humans. Now, what I've talked about so far is basically just brand marketing, or the distribution aspect of building a brand. I would say this is the most important because awareness and reach are the ceiling on how much money you can make. Now, a lot of people don't believe that. They actually think branding is primarily about positioning, getting the brand exactly correct. But I would say that it's more of a cruder effort of elevating fame, of generating awareness, of reaching a lot of people. Because the limit on how many people can buy from you is how many people have heard about you. So getting people to hear about you is actually more important than what they think about you or what their opinion is about you and how much they like you. Now, the other key aspect of branding that gets beyond this distribution awareness stuff is memorability. In other words, you can't just get people to hear about you. You also need to get them to remember your brand. What's most important here is that they remember you when a buying situation occurs in the future. For example, if your car breaks down, what service provider first comes to mind? If you're hungry, what do you think about buying? Snickers, for example, has done a great job aligning their brand with hunger. So you want to peg your name to the product category and the triggers or buying scenarios. Let's look at a few more examples. When people think about buying a customer relationship management system, they think of Salesforce and maybe a few other brands like HubSpot and Zoho. If you sell CRM software, you need to align your brand with that product category. If you're selling soap, align your brand name with soap. If you sell marketing consulting, make sure people associate you with that service. Ray-Ban is the first brand that comes to mind for many people when they think about sunglasses. Samsung and Apple are the first names that come to mind with mobile phones. One of the common mistakes I see with startups is that they don't explicitly say what product category they're selling. Their brand talks about high-level concepts like feel good or make more money or be more confident, but those are too vague to be helpful. You want to be remembered for what you sell. A common mistake I see with branding agencies is they try to make brands meaningful rather than memorable, but these are often mutually exclusive. One of the most memorable insurance brands to me is Lemonade. The reason it's memorable is because the name has nothing to do with insurance. It's basically meaningless. If they called themselves Fraser Insurance and used prototypical insurance imagery, they'd be totally forgettable. Research shows that customers often misattribute ads to the wrong brands. That's because too many brands look and feel the same as competing brands because they're trying to be meaningful rather than memorable. So when it comes to the design and naming of a brand, you want to be distinctive. You want to be memorable and not confused with the competition. Research shows that the easiest way to do this is with mascots. Bouncer, for example, is software that cleans emails and uses a giant image of a gorilla. MailChimp uses a chimpanzee. Salesforce uses cute animals that have nothing to do with software. Tons of cereal brands use animals. One of the key reasons you want to be distinctive and have a memorable brand is because it's one of the most sustainable monopolies. Competitors can copy your product features, they can take your customers, but legally, they cannot take your brand assets. Those are protected by law. So every time you promote your brand, you're creating equity that cannot be stolen and cannot be diluted. But if your brand is not distinctive, you're not building anything of value.